Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. Today, I am chatting with narrator Anne-Marie Lewis. Anne, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing better now. I'm talking to you. How are you, Viviana?
Thanks. No, I'm good. I will say that having these conversations with you guys for a podcast are always a sweet spot for me, because I could be having a shitty day or something like that. I always say, okay, I'm going to be talking to insert the person's name later tonight, so it's going to be a good day. It's going to end in a good note. It's going to end in a good note. So yeah. So I understand. We're going to have some fun today. We're going to start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating, and how you got started.
I am a relatively newer narrator. I've been narrating for about 4 years, but haven't had the output maybe that a full-time narrator might have, having narrated for 4 years, because I've been doing lots of other things. I came to narration as a huge fan of audiobooks and listened to them constantly, because I did a lot of driving to and from rehearsals, or dealing with taking kids to places, and just had lots of time in the car to listen to books. And then as I started listening to more books and listening to different genres, I don't know why, I just never really focused on this, realized that the majority of these were done by actors. And I'm thinking, why aren't I doing this? My background is my performance background is, started with opera. Then I moved into, after 20 something years of singing and opera, got more into some musical theater, and then got into straight theater. And I don't know why we use that term, straight theater, but there it is. And then started thinking, there's other things I can do besides just singing and getting up on stage. But the majority of my performance background is from the stage. And then I took a class, a voiceover class in the city. I'm in Chicago, where they offered all sorts, sort of like a survey course on different aspects of voiceover work. And I thought, I'm going to find out about audiobooks. And I didn't.
Oh, no.
The woman teaching the class had no idea about audiobooks. She was aware of them, of course, but she didn't know, what all was involved. And of course, I hadn't really started researching, and there's a plethora of resources on the internet. But of course, I didn't know that at that time. And then about a month or two after the course ended, she contacted me and said, hey, you know what? There is a local Chicago actor/director who is an audiobook narrator, and he teaches a class on how to get started on ACX. So I took that class, and that's how I got started.
Wow.
With all these other things, in the background. But that's basically how I got started. I came really as a lover of audiobooks.
And when you say lover of audiobooks, were you listening to specific genres? And if so, which were they?
I am a sucker for mysteries. And I blame my upbringing, my early days of reading. I blame it on Nancy Drew. I was about 6 years old, and we lived next door to this family that had teenage girls, and they were a little bit too old for the Nancy Drew books. So they gave a couple of them to me. And of course, I'm thrilled that these big girls gave me these books. And I was like, I am going to read. And the first one I tried was called The Moonstone Castle Mystery. And I was like, I am going to read this book. And I sat down and I could not read that book. It was too hard for me. It wasn't really for a first grader. And I remember being really frustrated about that. But a couple years later, about a year and a half later, I was able to start reading them, but that's where I got started. So, and I love that. I love. I've always loved mysteries, and so that's a lot of what I started with, and then listening to, and I started branching out. There was a narrator who died actually in 2018. But I just loved her work. So I started listening to all kinds of stuff that she recorded. Her name was Catherine Kellgren. People know her as Katie Kellgren. And she's an American who is trained in London. And a lot of her British accents she used were just so spot on. And so she would narrate full books with a British accent. And I think it was her work that kind of got me thinking, hey, I'm gonna try that out too. I just really admired her work, and then I kind of branched into. I'm also a big sucker for I'm a true Anglophile, so I love anything British, just about. So I listened to things that like Davina Porter narrated, because I loved all her Outlander work. I've listened to Helen Lloyd, but I just. So it was like one thing led to another. So I listened to, Catherine Kellgren do some British things, and then I started looking up other British books, and then I would find those things, and that would lead me to another narrator. And what else I like? I like nonfiction too. I listen to some, like anything having to do with history, some of the funnest things I've learned. Well, I listened to Hidden Figures, which the book that the movie was based on.
Yep.
But the movie only spotlighted a couple of women, but the book talks about all kinds of women who contributed to our space program, and women of color, and a few women who I guess were Caucasian as well. But I was listening to this book, and I was thinking, how is there this huge part of our history? How is this kept a secret? How is it we don't know about this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was thrilled by it, but I was also kind of incensed that I didn't know anything about these women engineers, these brilliant genius women in science, So anyway, that kind of led to another book I listened to that Cassandra Campbell narrated, and now that name's going to escape me too. But it's about a husband and wife team who broke these codes that the Germans had set up during World War II. Stuff like that. I love that stuff.
So, and you also have narrated some of that stuff too, because you've narrated some cozy mysteries, right?
I have I've not done any mysteries yet.
I thought you had something. Oh no, never mind.
Not yet. I've done a couple of the nonfiction I've done have been more like memoirs.
Yes.
One was the memoir of a very successful businesswoman, a Chinese American businesswoman who really it's a very fascinating story. Kind of broke the glass ceiling and didn't like being in a Fortune 500 company, and then she tried doing her own thing, and then she kind of she made bad investments and lost everything, and then she built everything back up again. A really fascinating woman. And then another nonfiction I did was sort of like a memoir, also sort of a how-to book, self-help book about women who are professional women who are victims of domestic abuse. Apparently it's a subset of domestic abuse victims that people don't expect to be victims. People think, oh, well, she's a high-powered attorney, she's a high-powered doctor. They would never be victims of domestic abuse, which, I mean, victims of domestic abuse are everywhere.
Yeah.
And this woman is a physician, and and basically told her story and also her findings. And she had lots of interviews with other women, high-powered, sort of high-profile women in horrible situations. So those are my those are my 2 nonfiction so far. But no mysteries yet.
Yeah, sorry. I saw one of the
Mysteries.
covers.
Why
and it looked
have I
like
not
one.
done a mystery?
Yeah. See, well, now we're putting it out there. So if anybody
Yeah.
loves some cozy mysteries, so you now have a narrator that loves the genre.
I do love the genre. I do. I love it. I'm always the one. I'm the one in the house who finds everything for everybody.
Oh,
Mom, where's this? Mom, where's that? Because I know. And if I don't know, I know the questions to ask to find it. So I think I should have been a detective,
Yeah.
if
Who
I
knows?
didn't go
Perhaps in
into
a past life. Yeah.
performing. Oh, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being someone that loves British culture and all things British and things like that, and what is your favorite accent to perform? Is it also British or is it something else?
No, it probably is. I have performed in 4 different stage adaptations of Jane Austen, four different Jane Austen novels. And 3 of them were musicals. And I was in a production of Northanger Abbey. That was, again, the term I always think is kind of weird. That was straight theater. And then I was in a musical version of Pride and Prejudice, and of one of Persuasion, which I'm going to expand on in a second. And then right when COVID shut everything down, I was about 5 performances away from closing a musical version of Emma, which I was performing at Chicago Shakespeare Theater. But Persuasion was adapted by a woman, a local Chicago singer who has this. He adapted it where the framing device of this story was Jane Austen herself is writing out the story, and she is telling her niece and nephew the story of Persuasion, and then this Jane Austen character then actually jumps into the story, which comes to life on stage, and she's the protagonist. And that show, this is part of what fueled my love for England, went on tour from 2013, and our last time we went to England was 2019. So every single year for like 7 years, we went on tour around the UK with the show. And so talk about putting a lot of pressure on someone to get their accent correct. And this was all received pronunciation. But we're a bunch of, basically almost all of us Midwesterners from the United States hopping across the pond to perform Persuasion for natives. And we're doing everything with British accents, attempting to do them with British accents. But I think because I got inside all those characters, I mean, physically got inside those characters, and I had a chance to bring them to vocal life on stage. I think that's why I'm probably most comfortable doing RP. That was my long answer to your question.
And I love it, because now I'm trying to figure out how it would be, Pride and Prejudice would do as a musical.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. There's quite a few different musical versions out there. I think there's no less than about 5 or 6 that might still be running somewhere in the country, in the United States right now. Maybe not right now, but the one we did was quite good.
Okay.
But it's a very popular one to set to music. The Pride and Prejudice had original music written for it. But the Persuasion that we were in, the woman who ran this opera company, she was very smart. She used music that Jane Austen either wrote about or copied into her journals. So this was music that Jane Austen knew. And then, of course, you don't have to worry about any sort of
No
copyright
copyrights.
infringement.
Yep.
Because it's all in the public domain now. Yeah. So there's some Haydn in there, and there's Corelli. The Corelli music is very prominent. It plays a big role. It's sort of like the light motif that goes through the whole show. But it's pretty clever how she did that.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about paying.
That is
composers.
true. I love Pride and Prejudice, and I love the books and everything. As far as the movies, you know how they always say there's two camps: those that love the BBC America special with, and then also those that love the movie from 2005 with Matthew McFadden. That's my favorite version. So I'm trying to picture, see how that would do as a musical.
As a musical?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. You know what's for sale? I saw the other day. The house that they used as Longbourn, which is where the Bennets lived, in the Colin Firth version of Pride and Prejudice, is for sale.
Oh wow!
It's like, I think they said they're looking for what I think they were saying, they're taking bids of at least £6 million.
Oh, they're making my money too back there.
So, yeah, no, let's all go and break our piggy banks and put it together and make an offer.
Maybe a couple of us can get together and use it as retreats where we can then, buy the house and then have people come over for, as retreats, whether it's the authors writing them or the narrators practicing,
Yeah. I love it.
Only way I could afford something like that. Get 15 of you guys together and say, okay, guys, let's go. I got the business plan. We'll do it that way. I do love seeing those houses when they go up for sale, and I'm going, oh, this is gonna hurt.
Big time. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's always fun to dream.
Yes, that is true. It is fun to dream. I will say too, sometimes when I've seen some of those houses when they've been in disarray and completely breaking apart because no one's been taking care of them for such a long time, that's so heartbreaking too. Because there were so many good stories that happen in those houses, from people that lived there to potentially, if it was inspired to do into a movie or a book, or use as a stage. So it's one of those days, one of these days, right? We'll hit the lottery. We'll do that collectiveness of narrators and authors together and do the retreat thing across the pond. Why not?
Oh yeah. Well, that's what it was like for us when we would take Persuasion over to the UK. I mean, it was like it was our summer camp.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. It was great. I mean, we really got to experience lots of different places. We were in Scotland, northern England. We never made it over to Ireland. We did go to Wales.
Okay.
We did quite a few places in the southern part of England. We were in London performing. It was lovely. Yeah. It was so fun.
That's fun.
I don't know if we'll ever do it again though, but
hey,
COVID changes all kinds of things.
Yeah, but at least you got to do it. I mean, that's also fantastic. I love it when people take that leap and do what they love, and they're able to explore, whether it's in the States or explore something new to them, or traveling and things like that. It's a rare gift sometimes when you can take it, but also taking that jump, taking that leap of comfort. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it. Okay, I'm going to do it.
And I think I think that's me getting into audiobooks too.
Yeah. None
of my colleagues, I mean, my closest performance colleagues are all opera singers, basically. And then a couple of them are musical theater people, and some of them are just theater people. Again, not straight, just, I don't know how it was to say, but anyway, and nobody was really doing even voiceover work. Yeah. So that was kind of a, I guess in a way I was taking a leap there too.
Yeah.
Into this work. But I love it. It's really fun.
Especially when you were taking a class hoping to get information about audiobooks and you get everything else in there except for that. It's like, okay, maybe this may not be the path. Is this a sign?
I know.
Yeah,
Go
thankfully
home
the
and
yeah,
do not pass go. Yeah.
thankfully the teacher
Forget
got back
about.
to you and said, "Hey, here's someone that you can connect with for that information."
Yeah.
Because back then there wasn't a whole lot information out
Yeah.
there. There was stuff, but that's the
Yeah.
other issue too when people say, "Oh, just Google it." And sometimes, yes, a lot of people had to start that way, but there is
Yeah.
so much information out there that you don't really know how to differentiate the truth and the good versus the someone that's just talking out of their ass.
That's
A-
right.
And
That's
that's
right.
where I
And
think people get frustrated with that answer of just Google it. So,
right.
mhm.
And I have since I've started, I've had a lot of colleagues and friends of colleagues contact me in, asking, "Hey, how do you do this? How do you get started?" And and I don't want to be that person that's like, go figure it out yourself. um but I also it's happened so many times. I've heard other narrators talk about this too,
Yes.
that it's happened so often that you're sort of like, huh, you know, why am I giving all this information out for free? But I am not, I mean, I'm still learning the ropes. So I don't feel like I can actually say, hey, sit down with me and I'll come, for a consult fee, I'll give you all this information. But I have put together a document that and it has all kinds of resources listed in there and links and stuff like that. And I'll share that document with these people. And then I'll say, here, go look at all this stuff, go away with it
Yeah.
and digest it, and then come back and ask me some questions,
Yep.
and you may find out it's not for you. But, after you've digested this information, it's a lot, and it's a lot to look at, but then come back and ask me some questions, because then they'll know what to ask. Because
Yes.
you know how that is when
Oh,
you're in the,
absolutely.
I was plopped down in the middle of the audiobook world by just, knowing how I knew how to create an ACX account. I knew how to submit out auditions. And then I just started doing things. I didn't know anything about punch and roll. I was doing like the dog clicker technique. I didn't really know much about all the different DAW, that's digital audio workstation software for people who don't know. I didn't know about those different software possibilities out there, and I was just doing exactly what this guy in Chicago was teaching, because that worked for him, and he's like, just do it this way. So I did, but as I started going, I'm like, I'm not super happy with my performance. I'm not super happy with my quality of the sound. I'm not super happy with, all these things. I'm like, I wanted to be better. I wanted to make myself better. And that's when I started looking. I knew enough at that point, like what I needed to start asking. I knew enough to get out the questions that I thought I needed to get where I needed to go to find answers for these different things to make myself better. And that's when I started realizing that there were coaches out there, which, of course, I'm an opera singer. That's all we do all the time. We take voice lessons as often as we can. We meet with vocal coaches as often as we can. It's because it's a lifelong pursuit. Your body is constantly changing. So the demands of your voice are going to be a little bit different in your body. Same thing in audiobooks. It's the same thing. Same thing as an actor. You always need that other set in the audiobook world, that other pair of ears to help guide you, or in theater, the other set of eyes, or, there's all you need to constantly hone your craft.
Yeah.
And so, when that light bulb went off, I'm like, yeah, duh, let's get going on all that. So, and I've been lucky. I've worked with some really terrific coaches. I finished the Sean Pratt nonfiction narration and business course. I took Matthew Lloyd Davies' 21 Targets, which was crazy hard because it was a lot of work all in 21 days. And now I'm taking Joel Frumkin's acting for audio course, which is basically like a semester's worth of acting, but it's specifically for narration, which is really nice that it's so specific. And I've had one-on-one coachings with others as well. But that is so important to get your voice in front of another pair of ears. It really is.
Because I mean, you guys are there by yourselves. I mean, it used to be you would have an engineer, you would go to a studio and you would have an engineer, maybe a director there helping you along the way to make some of those artistic decisions. Nowadays, most of the time, y'all are by yourselves. And as you were saying, your voice is a tool. And if you don't hone the skills, you don't know that you have them either in some cases. So I think that coaching is extremely important, and there's various different ways to get it. There's a bunch of different resources out there with lists of the coaches and what is it you're looking for. And as you said, there's different types of coaching, from the business side to the vocals to the acting and so on and so forth. And those are all great coaches that you were mentioning. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, and the business thing is very important too, because every audiobook narrator you meet, they are their own business, so they need to, we all need to know how to handle that part of our, and a lot of people don't like that part. I know that. Singers are like that too, very willing to give away, their services for very little, or even sometimes for free. We need to recognize our worth, our value, and we need to stand up for that. And we also need to be organized about how we take care of our business finances and our
schedules,
marketing and all those schedules. You got it.
Yep.
Exactly. So we need to approach it like, okay, I'm, walking into my office, which is basically I'll go sit at my desk, that's your office, but, put on your business hat for a little bit, do your business stuff before you go play with your script. It's part of being a narrator. You just have to do that.
And many times, many of them didn't even think of it that way. And I think now more and more are. And that's when they're seeing a bit of a change in the amount of work coming through, or how they're spending their time correctly now versus before, how they would, spend time in one thing versus another, and realizing how that basically it's a business. So a lot of things are important, but it's just also how you utilize those important things. So,
I think it's also important when narrators share their own experiences with more seasoned narrators and more green narrators, because I think because we are so solitary in our work, we don't realize that maybe there's a more efficient way to do something, or maybe there's a better tool that we can use to do these things. And you won't know these things unless you share what you've been doing with somebody else who's trying to do the same thing you're doing. When someone says, hey, you know what, this particular software helps me keep track of all my my books and my schedules, and and this is a great DAW to use, and this person showed me how to do a great website, that kind of thing. We just need to have the wherewithal, the I don't know, just kind of take our egos, check our egos at the door, and just say to somebody, hey, I need a little help on this. Can you help me?
I mean, I realized that too when I saw a bunch there was a couple of narrators that were really excited about the fact that they were now utilizing Airtable to do some of their scheduling and some of the stuff. And I'm going, if you all would have just asked me, spreadsheet, she who loves spreadsheets, that you guys were looking for a tool that was already out there to help you with XYZ, I probably could have told you about Airtable about 3 years ago.
Well, so I'm an Airtable user too now, and I didn't know you, Viviana.
I know,
ago, so
that's true. These did know me. That's why I was like, I looked at them. Okay, technically, I looked at their accounts on Instagram when they were talking about it, but you know what I mean. You look at them and you're going, really? Okay, I love the fact that you're on it. But it's true. Sometimes you just have to have the conversation and not be afraid to ask the question. I think sometimes we are afraid of looking dumb or looking not as savvy as people might think we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
scary. I don't take that away. I mean, we all have that moment. I've learned
Yeah.
to just say, fuck it. I'm gonna ask, and like you said, check the ego at the door and just ask, because I'm also a huge advocate for working smarter, not harder. So
Yeah.
ask.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody ever has any
Exactly.
questions, feel free to ask a co-narrator, and one that you've seen them do something, whether it's on social media, or if you know someone that is in the industry, and myself. If I don't know the answer, someone may know someone that doesn't, can connect you with them. That's the other thing too. You don't have to be a SME at everything, but it's always good to network. So just ask. So that's important.
Yeah. Yeah, just ask, because sometimes even if I don't know the answer, if someone asks me a question, I'll be like, oh, wait a minute, I think I remember so and so was talking about that. Go talk to so and so. I know they were actually talking about what you're talking about. So you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now when the conversation comes up about scheduling, I've had one or two come to me about that. Because I'm like, they're like, well, I know that you love Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, well, Airtable is really fun. I go, and now these XYZ individuals have been using it specifically from a narrator's perspective. So you may want to reach out to them, where I may use it more from a different, like, social media calendaring perspective. Right. And so that's been really nice to be able to do that. And that's just, again, also one of the reasons why I love this industry, is that we are able to do that with each other and just connect folks with people, and collaborate and work with each other. And there's no jealousies, because there's work for everybody. And well, there shouldn't be, but anyways, there's sufficient work for everybody to play at the sand table, kind of a thing. But we're going to be going to Allure, and we're going to be meeting a bunch of each other's in September.
I'm really excited about that too.
Yeah.
That'll be, because it'll be my first in-person thing ever. I did APAC, which is the Audio Publishers Association conference. I've done that twice, 2 years in a row, but it was virtual. And in all honesty, I just didn't like going into the little bubbles they had. I just don't like doing that. I can't do that. I can do better in person, I think.
Yeah, there's
which is like
things.
the socializing and the networking, and that wasn't my thing. So
plus, also, we've been doing it for so long, right? We've been doing the Zooming for so long, and when we think about going to an event like APAC or a signee, we're like, we're gonna people. Oh crap, we're gonna people, but we're gonna people, and
yep.
And that from that, and then they're like, we're gonna Zoom. I'm like, oh man. So I think a lot of people, especially the narrators, were like, but we want to get out. We want to people. But Allure, we're gonna get to people.
Well, and Allure is making history.
Yes,
as a history buff, I'm looking at it in that perspective, because it's really the first official audiobook con. It's audiobook focused, right?
Yep.
I think.
Yep. It is. So there's been, as of late, maybe the past 2 years, when things have started to quote unquote get back to normal. And I think that Allure has been planning this for almost 3 years. So people knew that this was going to be coming. And of course, it would have happened earlier, but pandemic. And other events such as Book Bonanza and the one in Philly have realized that there is this niche of listeners that are lover of books, that love to read, but they're not reading with their eyeballs, they're reading with their ears. And they've been, it almost seems like they're testing it out, but still the focus is not them. It's not the audiobooks. It's not the audiobook listeners. It's not the authors that write the audiobooks either. So Allure is its first of its kind, where it's specifically focused on the audiobook lover and those that are in that community, including authors and narrators. So that's going to be great.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Cool. Is this also your first event that you're signing as a narrator?
Yes, it is.
Which
is kind of, I mean, who thought of like having narrators sign? You know what I mean? That's kind of, it's authors are the ones who sign.
Yeah.
But I have a little goodie for anybody who seeks me out. I have something for you. If you come to Allure, and I supposedly, I guess we have little tables I might be sharing with somebody, but if you find me, I'll have something for anybody who finds me have a little something
Aw,
to give to you. So
yeah.
look for me.
Yes. So I know that it's not being shared out in the open as far as what it looks like, but they have been working on the mapping of the room. And they're looking at, how to, place everybody and things like that. Usually at events, they'll go in alphabetical order, just because it's easier for the attendees to find people versus other ways that have been done in the past. But definitely it's going to be something. I know there's a scavenger hunt too that's occurring, that's for attendees to kind of find individuals, and it's going to be all loads of fun. I'm getting some info. I was invited to participate in that, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll be part of the scavenger hunt. Yay.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, and of course there's going to be the two parties, the Prohibition Party and the Fire and Ice Gala. Are you going to be going to those?
I have tickets for both.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I don't know what to wear.
I think everybody's in a similar boat.
No. So it's September, and September in Chicago tends to be really nice.
Okay.
But it could be chilly. It could. It would never be like frigid.
Okay.
I mean,
unless you're by the lake.
Now that I've said it.
Lake. Yeah.
Well, but we're right on the lake. It's at the Palmer House, so that's pretty much on the lake. So,
but it's not. But it's still not as far as the pier is, as far as in the lake.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, doesn't. Yeah, you're not. No, you're not sticking out into the lake. No, you're on the. But that's still considered the lake front because
lakefront.
Chicago
by the loop.
Yeah, there's still it's its own sort of what's the word I want to use? Climate.
Yes.
Right there by the lake. It's its own climate.
I recall.
Away from the lake is a different climate. You recall. Okay.
I do. Yeah. It went years ago, and it was one of those, and I think it was, I want to say maybe about April-ish or March.
Okay.
And it was cool.
Yeah, it's iffy. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was still, I got the same information you just said about it having its own climate. There were days where it was nice and warm, but not like hot, warm, a la Orlando, Florida warm, right? It was just nice. And then I remember the time that my best friend was getting into it, heated conversation with her significant other of the time. And we were at the pier, and I'm going, girl, I'm freezing. Let go.
Yeah. It can be very painful. Yeah.
But I'm glad it's going to be cool, at least again compared to here, Florida.
No, it won't be. Yeah. It'll be cooler than that.
Yeah. But the parties are
like
indoors.
I said, now that I've said that, I've probably yeah, that's true. It's indoors. That's true. That is right. It's indoors.
I mean, so we can still, it's a little different because they're indoors. So
that's right. Well, I'll figure it out. I have a little 6 weeks.
Yeah.
No, not even. No, a month.
A month. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's still, I mean, people are starting to figure out what they're going to wear. Some of them are trying to find the themes for it, whether it's a prohibition and kind of have like that 1920s flappers kind of a concept to it, or, inspired by that, that era. And then the Fire and Ice, it's going to be fun too with the gala and the red carpet and all that stuff. So it's going to be fun and exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah. Do you have an idea of how many attendees are going to be?
Oh, goodness. I don't, but I think I saw that they were between now and when they were going to air, they were heading into maybe the 500s that are attending more or less. Yeah. It ebbs and flows so much because of, things happening between now and then, whether, of course, family emergencies to, traffics and flights cancellation and all that fun stuff that happens.
Yes, it happens.
And that's inclusive of even some of the attendees. That's the other thing too. I know sometimes the attendees get rather the signings, the attendees get a little frustrated because they're like, I really wanted to go meet and see XYZ, and then stuff happens and then XYZ is not there, and I'm like, I know it sucks, but look, over there was like ABC, so let's go, and so it's a lot of changes and stuff like that, but the lineup this year is fantastic, so I'm really hoping that it is a huge success with everybody, and everybody's happy with it, so we can have more Allure years to come. So that's going to be fun. And also maybe other events too that realize that about as far as including audiobooks as more a part of versus a couple of little fun
Mhm.
things here and there. So
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Yeah, like usually it's like at any of these book conventions, it's like a little breakout session where people will say, it'll be a little like panel that talks about how to
Yes.
get your book into
Into
audio.
audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll have one or two of
Yeah.
those.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. And then they, like I said, in this year, they had a couple of where they had invited a couple of narrators to attend and be part of the
Mm-hmm.
signing. But Allure is just going to be all about the audiobooks. So it's
Mm-hmm.
audiobooks here, audiobooks there, audiobooks everywhere at Allure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun. Yeah. So aside from going to these conventions and others that may be popping into, years to come, when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
What do I do well, I still sing.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually am a regular cantor at my church, and I take a lot of of delight in that. So I continue to sing. I'm the mother of 4 boys. So that takes up a lot of my time too. um the older ones are the 3 older ones are kind of either out on their own or still in college, and the youngest one just started 8th grade today. So they're starting to get into that. He's starting to get into the age where he's a little bit more independent, but I still have to take him everywhere. He can't just drive himself yet.
No.
And
Yep.
we moved from the city. I'd lived in the city of Chicago. The whole family did for I came out to Chicago for graduate school. I went to Northwestern to study opera and stayed, and then got married, and we stayed in the city. And then my father died in 2018, and it became very clear pretty quickly that my mom and my youngest brother, who has Down syndrome and has always lived with my parents, it became clear really quickly that she wasn't really going to be able to keep doing this on her own. My dad he did a lot for them, and so she just needed a near support system. And I have a total of 5 brothers, but my husband and I are really the only ones in the position that we're able to do this. So it's my husband's idea to have my mom and brother come live with us. So they moved from Pittsburgh, and we left our house in Chicago because it wouldn't work. They just couldn't live there with us. And we found this much bigger house out in the suburbs, in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And so a lot of my time, it's also taken up caring for them. So in addition to my own family, which is another reason why, my time is split between, some performing, and then before the shutdown, and then taking care of my family. Then there was COVID. And then doing audiobooks, of course, but then there was COVID. And so then there was this big move, and now I'm still taking care of more family members. So, I can't just yet dive full time into narration, although that's what I want to do, but I do it as often as I can. So yeah. So the fun part of taking care of all of them, my brother is a Special Olympics golf champion, and so I'm learning to play golf.
Okay.
So that I can play with him. Yeah. Is that for fun? Maybe. It's really frustrating, but yeah, okay, maybe that's for fun. And my youngest son is he just got onto a travel baseball team. So, and I love baseball, but now I have to really love baseball, because next season next spring he's gonna have a lot of games. So that's for fun too.
I can hear it in your voice.
I have to, as much as I don't want to make it sound like I've got all these things to do. It really is. It's a joy and a blessing to be able to do these things. Yes. Because I think about it is. My mom lost her mother lost her father when she was 21, and then her mother when she was 31. And I had my dad for a long, long time. He was 85 when he died, and my mother's now 90.
Mhm.
So, you know, I can complain about having to like take care of people, but on the other hand, I get to take care of my mom, that's really
Yeah, some of us
that's
wish we
kind of
could
a
still do
gift,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you gotta look at things with a positive spin.
Yeah.
That's
No,
how I
I
say it.
think that when it comes down to being the caregiver specifically, it's okay to have
Mhm.
those moments of frustration. It's okay to have those moments of like, oh my God, one more thing I have to do, especially when you're a wife and a mom and you have a business and things like that. It's okay because it's human. It's
Mhm.
totally okay. And it does not
Mhm.
mean that you love them any less. It does not mean that you don't appreciate them any less. It doesn't mean that you're, taking anything for granted. It's a human reaction, and that's okay to have. I struggled with it a lot too, being okay with to do it. And then I just learned that I'm allowed to do that every once in a while and have that moment. And then I breathe and I'm like, and then I would go in and do what I needed to do. And it was one of those things that now looking back, you look and you go, "Oh, I'm glad and grateful that I had those opportunities to still be there for her and take care of them when they needed me."
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. And you know what? It's uh, I mean, selfishly, you could look at this as like, these experiences I'm gonna file away in my little arsenal of character things if I ever need to pull them out for narration. You're there's life is so rich and full of varied uh opportunities and experiences, painful, joyful, you know, depressing, whatever. But it's such a rich, treasure chest of delightful things that really informs what the human experience, what the human condition is, what it's all about.
Yeah.
And if we don't really let ourselves live, I mean, you can't really, you can't, I think you can't really be an actor. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got to tap into life to be an actor. Um, so anyway, that's sort of me
Mhm.
pontificating or justifying my own what's going on in my life.
Yeah, but I mean, actors do
But
that. Actors will use the experience that they've had in real life to then utilize that for that moment of emotion that's needed, whether it's happy or sad. And,
mhm.
and that's inclusive of audiobooks. So yes, well, thank you for sharing. We
No.
appreciate that.
Uh,
One of the things I love to do with the guests is play a game called Two Truths and a Lie, where you tell us three things about yourself and we try to figure out which one's the lie. So if you're ready with your three things.
I am. I am
Okay.
ready.
All
And
right.
you know, June was audiobook month. And so there was a prompt from PANA, which is the Professional Audiobook Narrators Association, and asking that. And so I kind of stole sort of this from what I posted. So if anybody saw my social media posts, you cannot play. You may not play this game now.
Okay, you guys step
But
out.
we have a theme for
Okay.
my three statements. The theme is food,
Okay.
and I will begin with you ever heard of surströmming? It's that really stinky fish that's in a can from Sweden. So when I was in Sweden, I actually had a chance to try this stuff, and a lot of people just they can't stand the smell of it. But actually, you know what? If you put it on a little bit of flatbread with some sliced red onion and a dollop of sour cream, it's really pretty good. So that's my first statement. Second statement, I ate soft serve ice cream in the White House staff dining room, and they didn't give me any sprinkles.
How dare they?
Jerks. And then the last statement, when I visited my Filipino side of the family in the Philippines, actually it was my grandfather's side. My dad is Filipino, So both of his parents are from the Philippines. But when I visited my grandfather's side, they made a lechon for me, which is a whole roasted pig, and they would not let me take one single bite of it.
They teased you. How dare they?
Mm-hmm. Which is the
lie. I want to say that they did not let you have any of the lechon is a lie.
Okay. It's the truth.
They didn't let you have any?
Okay, so what happened was after college, I went to Japan and I worked in Tokyo for 2 years as a teacher of conversational English. And at the end of my 2 years before I went back to the United States, I went to the Philippines to visit relatives I had never met before. But right before I left, I made myself, back in Tokyo, I made myself some sushi. And it was called ikura, which is salmon roe. And I had some like three or 4 days before I was going to leave to go to the Philippines. And I had some leftovers, and that stuff is expensive. It's very expensive. So I put it into the refrigerator and I had the rest the next day. That was my mistake. And I got really sick. So because I had an upset stomach and I traveled to the Philippines, my Auntie Hope, Tita Hope, would not let me eat any of this lechon. She wouldn't let me have any ice cubes. She wouldn't let me have anything to eat that was there. She only gave me fruit. Yep. But there's a picture of me with this pig. Yep, that's true.
See, there's a reason, like a valid reason behind it. It's not like they just cooked it and go, guess what? You're not having any of it.
Yep, but she was, yes. She says, I can hear it. I will not allow you to have a single bite. I can hear her right now. So, okay, which one's the lie? You have 2 left.
Oh my goodness!
I'm gonna make you figure it out. Is it the Swedish stinky fish, or is it the ice cream in the White House?
I had no sprinkles. Because that's the other thing too. One of y'all,
there were no
sprinkles. Yes, because it couldn't be one of those things where you went to the White House and had the ice cream and it did have sprinkles, but now you're changing it to without those, and that's the lie. But let's see. Stinky fish or the ice cream? Is the Swedish fish the lie?
Yes.
Okay.
I have never been to Sweden. I have never been there. And I've heard of the stinky fish. I'm sure you've seen that. There's been that Surströmming challenge on social media. Yeah. Yep. It doesn't. It's
not appealing. If it's stinky, I'm like, no. It just yeah. Okay. So you did have ice cream at the White House, and they did not have any
in the staff dining room. I did. My Filipino grandmother's brother was the ambassador to the United States from the Philippines. And he used his connection to get us this special tour of the White House. At that time, I lived in Alexandria, Virginia. I think I was about 9 or 10 years old when this happened. And my brothers, I'm the eldest, and my younger brothers and I went on this little tour of the White House. And it was just like our family and I guess my uncle Ed, who was the ambassador. And we just kind of walked around the White House with this one tour person and then tour guide, a tour person. That's why people give me a script to read. And then they decided, because we're all these little kids, are like, it'll be fun to have the kids go eat in the staff dining room. So we went in the staff dining room and they served us ice cream. And there were no sprinkles. It was just plain vanilla ice cream. So yeah, that's a weird experience, but it happened. Yeah.
It did. Yeah. Good memories, though. I mean, it sucks that you didn't get a chance to eat the lechon. I'm sure it would have been delicious, but you didn't make the decision to eat that fish, day afterwards. So
that was
on
on
you,
don't
girl.
do that. Don't eat sushi the next day.
No,
eat it
no.
the day you buy it. And if you have
Mhm.
leftovers, toss it.
Toss it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take it from
Yep.
it. Yeah. Just take advice from me. I've been there.
Goodness. So and before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you?
Oh, well, I'm currently prepping. No, not me. My pseudo is currently prepping her first book.
Nice.
My pseudo has her first book coming up, which is a reverse harem sort of paranormal kinds of thing. Very interesting. She thinks is very interesting. But Anne Marie Lewis just finished recording a book called The Forsaking of the Blind, which is the last installment of a fantasy series called The Wing Cycle. And it's by an author named E.G. Stone. And it's a very interesting series because the main characters are all disabled or differently abled. And I love that. I love that there's something that makes them sort of in their minds, or in the minds of society, puts them on the outside of society, and yet they are the movers and the shakers in these stories. And the first book is called The One Who Could Not Fly, and it's about a sylph, which is a flying character, and it's a sylph who can't fly. So, and she's got her skin color is wrong. No one else has that same skin color. Her wings are too small. Everyone else has bigger wings. So she's ostracized by her society. And then she falls in love with a human who is deaf. And the second book in the series is called To Never Hear the Song. And it's based mostly, it focuses mostly on that second main character. So it's a beautifully written series. And I think that's going to come out probably late September. And then another recent release is a book called Search for the Holy Grail. And it's written by M.J.L. Evans and G.M. O'Connor. They are based out near, I think, Victoria, Canada. And this book is crazy. It is, it's like 19 hours of a crazy romp through the 17th century Caribbean Sea. And talk about accents. There are English, Scottish, Irish, Indigenous, Dutch, Spanish pirates. And there's from Germany, there's a runaway countess and her handmaiden, and the countess's portrait painter, and a count who's chasing after them. And then there's like a corrupt Italian cardinal.
Oh my.
Who says he's on a mission from the Pope. Yeah. And then there's these corrupt government officials all over the place. And then there are these women who are from the series that preceded this, that I narrated for them. That series is called No Quarter Wenches. And it's a crazy kind of ribald, kind of irreverent, fun story, I think. But it's historical. I think they call it a historical romance. And I think it's sort of romance in the classical sense of the word,
Okay.
rather than the more modern that we think of as romance. Although there's a little hanky panky going on in this book. But one thing I wanted to say about this particular set of authors, Megan and Gary, actually it was Gary, they had written, I believe they had written the other series that preceded Holy Grail. They had written it as a screenplay, and then they changed it into a book. So it's so dialogue heavy. So that's very challenging. And I made a social media post after I had finished recording Grail, Holy Grail. And Gary wrote, he said, I loved what you did for our wenches. That was the other series. Your voices brought the book to life in a way I hadn't expected. I'm reading this. He said, when writing the script for Search for the Holy Grail, I heard your voice in the characters. There couldn't have been any substitute for this one. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Did you just say that?
Oh,
I have never that. Oh my gosh, but it's the most, that is the greatest compliment.
Yes.
I know that you could get. Wow. Thank you, Gary. It was so sweet. When an author does that, it's just, that really moved me in a great way. And another book that came out recently too. It's another series. It's by Stacey Lee. And her series is called the Nubble Light series. The third book just came out. It's called Never in a Billion. And there are crossover characters that appear in the books. They kind of pop up in later series. It's an open-ended series. So I just got the script for the fourth book. And she mentions that I co-narrate it with with a great guy. And he's located in Northern England. His name is John York. And she mentioned us in her acknowledgments in the fourth book. I'm like, are you kidding me, Stacey? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that recognition sometimes goes such a long way as a simple thank you. So I'm glad that you're getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it means a lot, especially when, their medium is print, basically, and mine's a little different. And so the fact that they're going to acknowledge us in that way, it's very inspirational too. I mean, it helps me, keeps me going. So
yeah.
It doesn't take much, does it?
No. It's amazing how, because we second guess ourselves, always trying to figure out if they're happy with things, if your decisions on how to do a particular character was the right one, even though that's what your gut was saying. So when an author shares their fondness and the love of what you did with their book, it's chef's kiss. Like, oh my God, that's so fantastic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like it when you do that. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of goodies that we have to listen to. So thank you for sharing all that.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and thank you for being my guest here on the podcast. I appreciate you. And I've had such a fun time getting to know you. So thank you.
Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, we get the people together. It's going to be so much fun in September when we go to Allure. But thank you for being here. I'm going to include all of her social media links and websites so everybody can follow her if you have not as of yet, and find her, and that way you don't have to go hunting for it. And all that information will be over on the episode's post at Viviana, Enchantress of Books. And until next time, happy listening.
Thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. Special thanks to Nixley Zenner, Carol Liebner, Brittany Robinette Leiter, Michelle Bastard,
Brandy Schmidt, April Branson.
The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive benefits including early access to episodes, shout-outs, special exclusive content, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/audiobookloving. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.